Hi, friends. Welcome back. So, headline: inflation rate hit 2.4% in September, topping expectations. And when I first saw this headline flash across my screen, I actually thought, oh, this is good news, right? Why is the market down? Well, it turns out you got to read the full thing, got to go through the details. That's what we do in this channel. And I want to go over the stuff with you guys. It says inflation rate hit 2.4% in September, topping expectations, basically higher than expectations, hotter than expectations. We're talking about inflation here. We don't want higher. We don't want hotter. So topping is used in this example. Again, it says higher or hotter. Then it says jobless claims highest since August 2023. Let's look at the numbers here. So essentially the CPI, right, consumer price index, the estimate was 2.3%. This is year over year. The actual came in at 2.4%. Core CPI, the estimate was 3.2%. The actual came in at 3.3. So again, both of these are hotter and higher than expected. This is not good news. This is actually quite bad news for the Fed. And again, higher than expectations on inflation, not good. And the Fed just started their rate cut cycle, and we have more bad news, which I'll show you in a minute here. But I want to go through this stuff. I always have to address this when people say, "Well, wait." When I hear that, inflation is at like 2%, it's low, whatever. But why are prices still high, right? Shouldn't prices be coming down? Essentially, guys, this is like the rate of price increases year over year. So prices may not necessarily be coming down where you are, right? We still see houses are still expensive. I'm sure you guys know this. You still see the price of things. You're like, oh my God, like, look at my car insurance. It'd be crazy. Again, this is the rate of increase. Just the rate of increases are slowing. So prices are actually still going up. Here's the other issue as well and we talked about this before. I'll show you guys a couple of things. When they did their on their vote, where are we cutting? Are we holding? Are we doing 50 basis point? Are we doing 25 basis point? Usually the Fed is unanimous, right? Publicly, they come out and say, hey, we all voted. We all agree. Fed Bowman, and she may be the only one that has guts over there. We've talked about this before. She was the first time to cast a dissenting vote. The first time that someone done that since 2005. So they don't do it very often. As you can see, they don't do it very often. And the minutes just came out from the last meeting, and they were divided on what to do, actually. So this is a real sticking point. The next meeting, let's just say, it's going to be like one of those family get-togethers where one sibling cheated or lied to the other sibling, or that kind of stuff, and then mommy and daddy's got to figure out what to do. It's one of those uncomfortable family meetings, or you could say like where people are all hating on each other before the election, and then get the results of the election, and then there'll be like lots of "I told you so." So I think the next meeting will be uncomfortable. I know I'm making jokes here, but I think it's going to be something like that. If inflation and if it ends up creeping up, right, and it's going to look like, let's say, for example, let's say it does it a couple months in a row, and you're like, oh my God, did we cut too early, or did we completely screw up? And then they reverse course and raise rates, or they hold it for a couple times. It'll really how can I say, miss expectations than what Wall Street was theoretically talking about before. And then what I mean by theoretically, and this is where it gets to be kind of a clown show, this stuff, and I try to go over this stuff with you guys all the time. You see all these people on TV, oh yeah, we got to cut, we got to cut, give me that 50 basis points, like let's get that money going again, let's go to another bull market. And then you cut, and then inflation creeps up, the market goes down. Oh, see, I told you I shouldn't have cut. Why didn't you listen to me? And you'll know from the people that you watch if they're kind of wishy-washy that way. I have never said that. I've always said, hey, you can be more cautious. You could even hold here if you want to maybe cut 25. I was never on board with the 50 stuff. So we could have a real problem. Now the issue is that you guys, I'm sure you guys understand this. There's people losing their jobs, right? And so one reason why you say, okay, let's cut is like, okay, if people are having trouble, finding work, then you cut the rate of borrowing, you get more money out in the world, and then companies, theoretically have more money to hire more people. That's the idea. The problem is that what if the growth isn't there to justify that, right? There's no reason to hire more people. If like, just for example, let's say we'll make it simple. Let's say you have a restaurant and the customers just aren't streaming through the door, right? You don't see the customers coming in, so there's no reason to hire more staff. So you let go of staff, right? And then unfortunately, this is kind of what happens. If you let go of staff, then you got, say, for example, more unemployed people, and then they have even less money to spend on your food, on your restaurants, and you get kind of in a downward cycle. And so this is where you're like, okay, let's get that money back out there. But these things take time. So regardless of what the Fed does, right, we may not see the actual effects for months from now. That is a real thing. So, I do want to say, put some caution into where, like, yes, month over month, it's true. It could just be a temporary spike. One of the things that's going on, I'm sure you guys know, we have the storm, which wow, two storms, unfortunately. So the first was the I forget my name of the storm. You guys can correct me. I can't. Oh, Helene, and the next one was Milton. I lose my track of storms. And then we also have the war and tensions in the Middle East. So what do these things have to do? Well, you could be cutting supply, right? So cutting supply would be either like in your oil, food, or various things. We also had the shipping and the dock workers. I think they're on strike. Was it 1 or 2 days? Like, it was a short one. I can't remember exactly how long, but this kind of stuff, like, it cuts the supply. So when you cut supply and let's say demand is the same, right, then prices will go up because you have more people who want to buy something and less things to buy. And then the opposite would be, hey, let's get supply going again. Let's get lots of stuff. And then prices can come down because you have too many things and not enough demand. And that'd be a good example of Tesla, right? So Tesla, they have this problem of, like, they're making too many cars and there's not enough people to buy said cars, and so they have to lower prices, right? So I'm just giving you guys a general idea of how to think about this kind of stuff. But I wanted to mention stuff before, though, is like when we all talk about all these things together, because I always say the same thing, like, look at the health of consumer if you want to know what the markets are up to. Look at, like, what companies are saying about their consumers, right? Because we're a consumer driven economy. You also look at, like, what's the Fed saying about inflation, like all these things, like, tying together, and it's a complicated thing. And this is sort of why we do this stuff every day, because there's always new data points to look at all the time. Let me give you another example. So, and if you don't know, we're doing a live stream on what Elon Musk is going to announce with the robotaxi stuff. I think it's going to be a bunch of smoke and mirrors. It's going to be fun, though. Regardless of what it ends up being, it's going to be fun. So please stop by the live stream. We'll do that just in a few hours from now. But I want to show you guys this too. And again, we're looking at health of consumer here, and we also want to see what companies are saying and what the Fed's saying, that kind of stuff. So I think the Fed is going to be a bit torn what to do the next meeting, and it'll be an interesting one. I saw this headline. This really caught my attention also. It says, homeowners haven't drained cash out of their houses this fast since 2008. I feel like almost all the headlines are like this. Guys, we haven't seen this for like 10 years. We haven't seen this since the great financial crisis. Okay, so basically a lot of people are taking out HELOCs. So it'd be the home equity line of credit, essentially what it is. And there's a variety of reasons why people would do it, and you may have done one in different in your neck of the woods. Let's say, for example, you have a whole bunch of high interest rate debt, so credit card debt, that kind of stuff, and you're like, you know what, I want to pay that off, and I want to use my home equity to do that. And so essentially you'll get a lower a rate on that. I think the average HELOC, I think it was like 8 point. Let's see what it says right here. The average interest rate on a home equity loan was 8.36% according to Bankrate, and then the average HELOC interest rate was 8.73. So it's interesting here because mortgage rates. So these usually come in higher than mortgage. I think the average mortgage rates these days is like 6, because talking about the cost to borrow money here. But then I've seen for some people, it depends what you're doing here. I think car loans averaging are like 11 or something like that, and I've seen like credit cards are averaging like 20 some. So right, if you're taking credit card debt and you're getting a lower rate, it's not a crazy idea. The problem is though, is that for many people this happens. Okay, I take out my HELOC, I get my rates lower, but then I go out and max out my credit cards again, and then you just borrow money from yourself in a way, and then maybe you kind of overspent, or you're just not keeping up with spending. Like, you're just treading water at this point. And I'm not into this stuff myself, but I understand why people would do it. But you have to stay disciplined. Some people do it though if you're going to do home renovations, and that may up the value of your home. So there's for any of these things, we're talking about money. It's not always bad, always good kind of situation. But I will say, if you overextend yourself, I would make the case that's always bad. So that's a good example of that. But I just wanted to bring this up though, because for me, this signifies that people are not in great shape. If you read these kind of headlines, like, we haven't had people pull up money out of their house since 2008. Like, I don't think that's a good thing. Or you keep this stuff where like jobless claims keep spiking up, now we got inflation creeping up. And I understand, like, so this, for example, this one says jobless claims just spiked, blame the storms, not a weaker labor market. Well, it depends, right? It depends what neck of the woods that you're in, right? So we have people in the community, they're in tech, and they're just like, man, I'm a coder and I haven't, had a good opportunities for like a year. I've heard people say that. Or I have a friend lives in LA, works in Hollywood, and it's been pretty ugly in LA. For anyone who works in entertainment, I'm sure you know this already. We have multiple people in the community that have that. So everything depends on you, on your situation. I'm just trying to give you a general outline of what's going on, markets, economy, etc., and how to think about money. And I always want to hear from you guys, like how are people on the ground feeling? I will say this, if your neighbor loses their job, it's a recession. But if you lose your job, it's a depression. That's just the best way to think about it. Again, it all depends on your neck of the woods. A couple of other things going on in the market right now, and this is something that also to understand markets, guys. Nvidia has been the hottest stock out there, right? And essentially, if Nvidia's making a ton of cash, a lot of other companies are going to want to jump in as well. So this just came out today. AMD launches AI chip to rival Nvidia's Blackwell. So there may be a fight there. Nvidia's always come out on the top of AMD, and for those of you who are really into this stuff, you can let me know. Was there ever a point where AMD was cooler? I don't know. Just I've witnessed this whole cycle, or well, I'll just say I every time I would see the marketing, that's a better way to say it. I always felt like Nvidia chips were better. This is based on my just sort of layman's use of graphics cards. I don't build that many computers. I built like 3 in my lifetime. But I don't know. Nvidia just always seemed like the cooler stuff to me. That's just been my sort of inkling. But it doesn't mean necessarily that Nvidia will take 100% market share all the time. There's always room for competitors. If you can come in cheaper, you can come in better theoretically. Why not? Now, one thing that with this issue is that Nvidia is under investigation for monopoly. So we'll see. That is still ongoing. We haven't got the results of whatever, and they can't really say and make comment on this kind of stuff. So we'll keep an eye on that. But what I will say though is that the rumor on the street, this is the last day or so, Google may get broken up. That'll send a lot of ripples to the tech market and through these big market companies. The monopoly stuff, that there's always been rumblings about, say, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, right? This kind of stuff. And the situation at Google, from my understanding of it, is that like if your search engine is required, or you make a contract with, say, like a Samsung or Apple to be the default engine, right? So when people buy a phone, and like the average person is not going to change your search engine on your phone. Just if it's already set to that, you just never touch it, right? A lot of people just leave it at default settings, and so this is one example, right? And especially the other stuff too as well. When you talk about Google, their practices on like where they do the rankings and stuff like that. Amazon does that kind of stuff. Meaning, like when you search for something, what pops up first? We'll just see. I'll just say that there's certainly some practices that these kind of companies do, and we'll see how good their lawyers are and what they come out. But yeah, if they get broken up, that'd be really, really interesting if they say separate the search engine from the Android stuff. The other thing that I want to talk about with you guys as well is actually this one, the storm. If we actually have a memory community, and I think we probably have more than one, but they're saying they have family in Tampa. And they, at least as of yesterday, they said they were okay. So if you listen to this, so I sincerely hope they're okay. It was interesting though, because I asked them, and I was like, why didn't your family go? He was like, I don't even want to ask about that. So it was because people, I think, know people in Florida where there's just some people who don't leave for whatever reason, right? Even if the storm is a coming. You could call it stubborn, you call it they just don't believe it. I don't know. It's hard to convince people just to change their minds for any number of things. And unfortunately, this is all, one, you're looking at, like this saying here, million insured losses could reach 50 billion. I would say, unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there about the storm. I don't, like do storm tracking and storm coverage on the channel like all the time. But I'll say, if you ever do hop over to social medias, you'll hear all kinds of conspiracy stuff, and just please be careful out there. I think in this day and age, how can I say, many stuff you hear on social media that it tries to play on your fears and get you hating on things and hating on each other and that kind of stuff. And in these situations, your best case scenario is to look for people who are positive and are honestly willing to help you, right? And there are people out there like that. I can't stress that enough. Whenever these kind of things, it's always good to hear a good stories of just your fellow neighbors and your fellow citizens looking out for you. So, I really mean that. And so I part of what's going on with this misinformation stuff I'll just say there are forces out there that benefit if Americans hate on each other, or benefit if Americans hate the government all the time. And it's frustrating for me. I don't know. It's hard to express this in words, like, because I see it so much, and I can't address every single misinformation thing that I see, but I'll just say it is a lot everywhere. And unfortunately, you have people in positions of power we'll say like a Mr. Musk, or there's a representative. I don't cover her that much. Her name is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was like insinuating that, Democrats can control the weather. Like, for real, that's for real. I was like, what the heck are these people smoking over there? And you always got to mention stuff, especially in this day and age. You talk about markets, you talk about money, these kind of things. It's important and sensitive issues to people, and just be careful, the stuff that you consume. And we just try to make this do together. If you want some honest advice on any of these things, don't overextend yourself, right? Don't take too big a risk. And learn to manage risk appropriately. That's why we go through this stuff. So like, if just for example, I bring up the picture of Musk because we're going to talk about this tonight. If Musk comes out and says, hey guys, everyone's going to buy 1 million cars, we're going to be awesome. And I look at the news and it's like, okay, well, inflation's a little bit high. People are losing their jobs, and people are borrowing money from their homes. Do you think they're going to borrow money from their home to buy your Tesla? I mean, maybe some people do because he convinced them to do that. But I mean, it doesn't mean that you should. It doesn't mean that's a wise decision. In my opinion, and especially with cars, is just pay cash. In terms of investing, someone asked me about this before. So for me, I just tell you this. This is what I do. I lock up money, and when money's locked up, oftentimes it's like I have a certain amount of cash that I budget for each month, and I just don't spend over that. It is what it is, right? And then all the excess, I just throw it in, and be it CDs, savings. I do buy stocks, right? Of course. But stick with index funds, that kind of stuff. It's relatively safe. And if you feel like the markets are too shaky, and you need that money now, don't throw it all in the market. Put it in other things where you're guaranteed to get returns. That's why I mentioned CDs, bonds, savings, this kind of stuff. Just hold some cash is not a crazy idea, because when emergencies happen, especially when you see the disaster stuff, you'll be happy you have liquid assets, right? To where you can get the money when you need it. We had a conversation on the live stream yesterday where someone was like, buying a house isn't great all of the time. Unfortunately, like the situation in Florida, for some people, that's absolutely correct. So, guys, these things are complicated issues. I try my best just to give you honest opinion and stuff, and I love hanging out with you in the community to have these discussions together. So anyway, I hope this stuff is helpful for you. I do appreciate your time always, and stop by the live stream. We're doing it tonight, and I'll see you soon.